Hello and welcome to a fall book recommendation video. I mentioned in my end of the year video that I did last week that I was planning on doing this video this week, and I asked you what you wanted to see for recommendations for the fall time, for autumn time. And so because going off of your comments, going off of what you think of as like a fall kind of read, I have 6 categories that I'm going to be recommending books in. I will have 3 books per category, and I challenge myself to not recommend any books in this video that I constantly harp on. So no Annihilation, no Lies of Locke Lamora, no Stefan Zweig, even though he would absolutely be great for this list. All 3 of those would be great for this list. I've been reading Dresden for a long time, so I bring it up all the time lately. No Dresden. Books and authors that I talk about all the time lately are not on this list. So I recommend all the books that I talk about all the time. Please read them. But we're going to talk, hopefully, with how many books I have on this list, with how wide the recommendations are, hopefully there will be at least one book on this list that you might want to check out. Advance warning that a couple of these books will fit into more than one category. I had to pick one though. And also there's a lot of classics on this list. Apparently when I think of fall time reads, classics come up a lot. Before I get into the recommendations though, I did want to mention real quick that I am doing a fall merch launch. I've been working with my artist Chi-Rog to have 3 new bookish fall time designs. My goal with my merch isn't really to have it have anything to do with my channel specifically, but rather to just work with an artist to create some nerdy, fun designs that people might like wearing. So I have 3 designs for this fall cozy launch. We have a fox parent with fox child reading a book together. Very cozy, very cute. We have 2 cozy fall dinos in a sweater, cozied up with a book in the fall time. And finally, I have a pirate design because I can't stop being me, but it's set at fall time, so it's thematically, it works. This final design is not yet complete as of the time of me filming this video, but it should be done the day that the video is posted. So my merch store is linked in the description. Do check it out if any of these designs interest you, if you'd like to check them out before fall ends. And now onto the recommendations. As I said, we have 6 categories. First category is going to be cozy. Second is atmospheric. Third is mysteries and thrillers. Fourth is spooky books. 5th is introspective, and 6th is fantasy fit for fall. So again, all of these categories are created coming from the comment section of the video where I asked, what do you think about fall books? Like, what is a fall book to you? And I'm trying to give recommendations catered to what y'all said you're interested in for fall time. So again, some of these books will fit into multiple categories, but 3 books per category. Hopefully something will sound interesting to you. First up for the cozy category, the first book / author that I have is Jane Austen. These are my Jane Austen books here, these white spines. I think that any Jane Austen book suits for the fall time. I think that she has a very cozy writing style that reads immersively yet slowly. You can just kind of sink into her books. Obviously, Pride and Prejudice is always a great place to start at any season, but I might actually recommend Northanger Abbey as a good starting point if you're looking specifically for a fall time read. Not because this is set during the fall, but because Northanger Abbey is a satirical novel that is in the style of wanting to solve a mystery. It has a gothic feel with a spooky castle and a tyrannical father with locked doors and mysteries and a protagonist that wants to see what's hidden here, wants to know what's going on. And it has these big suspenseful scenes that are very, you know, classic gothic sort of feel. And she'll open up the door and there's all this drawer, all this suspense around what's going to be inside the drawer. This is going to be it. This is going to be the clue. We're going to find out what's going on. And then like it's empty. And that's the kind of vibe of this book, where it's a character who thinks she's in a gothic tale, but it's a parody, and it's Jane Austen's wit and it's her humor, and it's not very long. And I think it suits for this time of year, and it's also just one of my favorite Jane Austens. Next up for a more modern book is Legends and Lattes. I'll make this one quick because I know this book is popular and probably a lot of people are putting it on their list. But this follows two characters, well, primarily one character who just wants to open up a coffee shop. She also happens to be an ogre who has had a life of battle and bloodshed, and now it's time to slow down. So she is opening up a cozy little coffee shop, ready to hang up her battle axe and enjoy a more quiet life. With that, she employs a server, a baker, makes friends with people around the town, and my one complaint about this book is too much plot. And there's very little plot, but it's so very cozy and slow, and it has just a big focus on the kind of brews that they're creating and remaking the menus, and our little mouse baker who's rolling out the dough and making cinnamon rolls. I think it was cinnamon rolls, or whatever the new pastry of the day is, and them slowly building up this bond as well as this business. And it's for someone who doesn't like cozy books in the traditional sense, it's wonderful. Or I guess I should say from someone who doesn't like cozy books, because I really just think whether you like cozy books or not, you might enjoy such an adorable book. Okay, final cozy book in this list is going to be Little Women. These are my Little Women books. I don't get to show them off very much, and I just think that they're so pretty. But Little Women too has a very cozy, slow down and enjoy it kind of story, full of family, sisterhood, love, loss. It's full, I mean, you probably have, if you haven't read the book, you've probably seen an adaptation, and if you haven't, please do. But it's one of the most cozy stories I think I've read. The next category is atmospheric books, and the first book I have for this is Lord of the Rings. I don't know what it is about this story, but every fall time going into winter, I just crave a reread. When we get to this colder time of year, I've just called back to this story that is so slow and methodical, but so detailed and full of the setting around the characters. And because the story is so long, I can take my time through fall and winter to just really soak in the story all over again and soak in this incredible setting. I usually don't read through the entire story every single year, but every fall I reread The Shire at the beginning because battery died, but that also just reminded me that I wasn't even holding up the book for you. Ta-da! I don't reread this every single year, but every single year around fall time I do reread The Shire at the very beginning because I think it's my favorite part of the story, and I know that probably seems crazy because there's so much happening here, but The Shire at the beginning is just so cozy to me, and there's something so nostalgic about revisiting it every single year. Next book in the atmospheric category, I have Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I almost put Piranesi on this list, and it could be here as well, but the reason I chose Strange and Norrell is because I think that it's a little bit more fall-time feeling in that it's that academic sort of like dark academia sort of vibe, but also Sherlock and Watson vibe. So this is set during the Napoleonic Wars, and at this time, the magicians of the world have essentially gone into obscurity or primarily extinct, but there is one wizard or one magician left. So Mr. Norrell is grumpy, reclusive, very scholarly, and then he takes on an apprentice, the opposite of him, which is Jonathan Strange. So this book, again, is very slow, very scholarly, but it escalates as we delve deeper into their obsessions and into how huge their magic can be. Next up, under atmospheric, we have The Chronicles of Narnia. I think Narnia is one of the first worlds that truly came to life on this scale for me as a reader. When I was young, reading through these books, I was there. This was my first doorway fantasy, as it was for many people, and still going back to it, it just is its own world beyond most worlds that capture me, that sink their claws into me. It's just very vivid. Probably a lot of nostalgia is connected to it to make it so alive for me, but I remember as a kid this world being my world. And I'm planning on reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with my son very, very soon. So pretty soon I get to vicariously see how he enjoys it, if it comes alive for him as well. I'll have to report back to you. Next category is mysteries and thrillers. Now this is the one that was the most challenging for me because I really don't read a lot of mystery and thrillers, but it was one that came up several times in the comments, so I have 3 for you. The first one, My Cousin Rachel. So this is a Daphne du Maurier book. I haven't talked about du Maurier in a long time, so you can't accuse me of breaking the rules. This is Daphne du Maurier. Her most popular book is Rebecca. I think her best book, though, is My Cousin Rachel. It's not my favorite book, though. My favorite du Maurier book is Frenchman's Creek, though I don't recommend it for the average reader. I just happen to love it. Jamaica Inn is my second favorite, and My Cousin Rachel is my third favorite of hers, but I think My Cousin Rachel is her best. So this follows a man who is perpetually single and happy for it, and he plans on passing on his estate to the cousin that he has, I think cousin, if I'm remembering correctly, nephew, that he's raised since he was young. And so he's just going to pass on his estate to him until he is away on a trip, falls in love, marries spontaneously, and then dies. And then his new widow shows up at the estate, and this is now all hers. And there's this interesting dynamic between Philip, the one who is supposed to inherit the estate, and Rachel, who is now here. This is a story that pulls you into the mystery of, did Rachel kill Amber Rose? Is there something going on? Is there supposed to be a connection between Rachel and Philip? How much is behind the mystery? Chapter by chapter, we slowly get more and more information about Rachel and Philip, and chapter by chapter, our allegiances shift back and forth of trusting one over the other. The little bits of information, we get tugged along in the story as well. I think that My Cousin Rachel is very similar to Rebecca in its construction and in how it leaves us, but I just think it's a little bit more masterfully told. And I loved Rebecca. Next up, I have to have Agatha Christie on this list, even though I'm not very well read with Agatha Christie. And Then They Were None was a book that I so enjoyed. I loved the gathering of these people, them all coming to the island with different intents, with different thoughts of why they were coming, and then the big revelation that it's actually going to be a whodunit, and they're actually going to try to see who killed, I don't remember who the first murder was, but then as they're slowly picked off and we're trying to figure out who done it. I'm really not a mystery girly, but this was an exception. I enjoyed this book so much. And actually, as I was creating this list and remembering that book, I decided that I needed to try another Agatha Christie because I really haven't given her enough chances. And if she did write a murder mystery that worked so well for me, I need to try more. So I was looking through them, and I'm considering either Endless Night or A Murder is Announced. But for those of you who have read a lot of Agatha Christie books and who have followed me for a bit and you kind of know my taste, please do let me know if there's one that you think would be better suited for me. I'll go through comments and I will end up picking my Agatha Christie based off of personal recommendations from y'all. Finally, and I'm so sorry that my entire mystery thriller list is classics, but again, I just don't read that many. And so this is the kind of murder mysteries that I typically tend to go for, apparently. And it's going to be A Count of Monte Cristo. I do think this is a great fall book because it scales a large span of time, but also just I think that it has that cozy, exciting, thrilling betrayal sort of feel to it. It is a very slow start. At first we see the betrayal happen and we know more than the protagonist does, but after a very slow, I mean, I still thought it was interesting, beginning, the tables turn and our protagonist knows more than us and we're just playing catch up as it quickly turns into a thriller of sorts, a revenge plot, and amazing, amazing things to discuss. I won't say any more because a lot of, like, a big bulk of this book I can't talk about without spoiling it. And just because it's a classic doesn't mean you have free reign to spoil. Not everybody's read every classic. but I do highly recommend it. Next up, we have spooky stories. Now, I'm not doing all-out horror. I do have a list if you want to have recommendations for like my favorite horror books. Again, not my most well-read genre, but I have read enough that I can tell you what I like. But for me, a fall spooky book is not about like the scariest book I can find, but more like a quiet, creepy, something that is unsettling and not outright horrifying, if that makes sense. So I'm starting off with Grimm's Fairy Tales because this is a great combination of folklore as well as that creepy sort of vibe. Now, Grimm's Fairy Tales are very hit or miss for me. Some of them are excellent. Many of them are collections of stories, like classic fairy tales that have been elaborated, seeing them in more of a base form. And many of them aren't very interesting, but I do have a collection of them, and I, for a while there, was just picking away at them one at a time. Haven't opened this in a long time, but I did find some very odd and strange stories in here. Next one I want to recommend is Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I own that one too. This one is literally an autumnal book. I'm almost positive I'm remembering correctly. This is set at fall time, and this is set when, well, it's set at fall time, and a carnival comes rolling in one night, sets up completely overnight, and these two boys, childhood best friends, they're still kids in the book, decide to go and explore it. But strange things are happening in this story. These two boys are met with some very creepy and odd scenes, and their childhood is in many ways challenged, as well as their fear of growing up, and that ties in. It's very much a coming of age story, but that also ties in with the adults' perspectives, or rather with the experiences that they're having and the fears that they have as well as these two boys that are bonded together and trying to make it through this very strange scenario that's happening on Halloween. This is definitely a fall story. It's definitely taking place at fall. Yes, because it happens at Halloween. Anyway, sorry. It is on this list because it is very much more creepy than all out scary, and especially the way it ends is much more suited for a younger audience. Not to say adults can't enjoy it, because I think they absolutely can, but it is very much a coming of age story with a lot to discuss because of the messaging at the end and the parallels that happen with the characters that I think are well worth digging into. Okay, next up, this is the most creepy on this list. It's called Mapping the Interior. This follows a boy whose father has just passed away, and then he sees an apparition that looks a whole lot like what must be his father's ghost. And as he's following this, the clues, as he's trying to understand what's going on, he finds that his house is made of something far bigger than what it looks. This too is a book that I think is full of a ton of discussion points. Off the top of my head, what I remember is grieving, bullying, alcoholism, family dynamics, cycles of family trauma. There's so much going on in so very few pages, which is typical for Stephen Graham Jones. I think he always packs a lot into his stories. And this one is, again, the most overtly scary as far as like certain scenes that we're going to deal with, but it's also very, very introspective as well. Which leads us beautifully into the next category, which is introspective. And my first book is going to be My Dark Vanessa. This is a book that's very dreary and academic and introspective and sad. We follow one character from two timelines, one when she is young going off to a boarding school and ends up in this relationship with her professor, and then two, her modern day, as she's looking back on that, she's still kind of stuck in this, I want to call it coping mechanism, because when she was a kid, she thought this was a whirlwind romance, and as an adult, she recognizes it as something that was very traumatic and that really affected her life in a terrible way, but that she's still kind of stuck in because she hasn't fully processed or worked through on the level that she should, because she has shoved it down so much and processed it as a romance when it definitively was abuse and manipulation. And it's not an easy book to read by any means, but it is an important book to read, I think, depicting this childlike ideal of this whirlwind romance and showing very plainly that it is nothing but manipulation and abuse and how severely it affects her on through life. Not something that just happened to her as a kid and she grew out of or she moved on from, but that it's something that clings to her and that she is still living through and working through even into adulthood. Incredible, incredible story. Very, very sad. But if you want something that's very introspective, very challenging to read at times, but very, very important, then this is a great fall-time read for that. Next up, on a different but still very sad note, and every morning the way home gets longer and longer, this is a story following 3 generations of men, a grandpa, a dad, and a young boy. And this is their story as they're walking through the granddad who is going through dementia. This book, I think, is 80 pages long. It's a book I've read, I think, 3 times and never been able to get through without sobbing. Dementia is something that I watch my grandmother walk through. It's something that my grandma is walking through right now. And it's something that has been it's something that my family has dealt with very closely. And so reading this book, I just felt like my family was understood. It just felt very, very close, very personal. And of all the Fredrik Backman books I've read, which I've read almost all of them, I have loved almost all of them. And still, this tiny little book has been my favorite. And finally, in the introspective category, I have Stoner. This is, I think it would be called a modern classic, maybe? It's another classic. He falls in love with teaching literature and becomes a professor, and we follow his life as a young farm boy going into school and then pursuing this career that he's so passionate about. And we go through his life, getting married, becoming a father. We see his many mistakes and the many things that were done to him by other people's poor choices as well. It's a very close book as we follow this character who is flawed, going through life, and we walk through that life alongside of him. It's a very melancholy book. I do have a spoiler-filled discussion that I did with Joanna, Jimmy, Alan, and Philip, and me. I believe it's all on Alan's channel, so please do check that out. It was such a great discussion, and if you have read the book, you may enjoy hanging out with us while we talk about it for a while. Final category is fantasy fit for fall. So because I read a lot of fantasy on this channel, I figure people will want a couple of fantasy stories thrown in there, although I've already thrown a few into the other categories. So first we're going to start off with Sword of Kaigen. This is a generational story set at wartime, following a mother and her son as they go through this wartime and really have their passions and their roles in life and their families. All of these things are challenged. It also has an elemental magic system to it that is so vivid and beautifully told. This is one story, this is a standalone, and it's so good. Next up, I have the Broken Earth trilogy. Specifically, the first book is my favorite, the 5th season. This is post-apocalyptic. It is dark. It's a survival story, and it's told from 3 perspectives. There is a first-person perspective, a second-person perspective, and a third-person perspective. It's a very unique narration tool that is used, in my opinion, masterfully. The way this is utilized, the reveals that come through these perspectives are incredible. I had to take a long break between books 1 and 2 because this book is so heavy and so tragic, but it's also one of the most skillfully told books I have read. It still just sticks with me. It's incredible. It is emotional, but it is so good. I'm not going to tell you anything about it other than that because it is, the mystery, what's going on, is a big part of the story. And you go into the story knowing absolutely nothing, and you stay knowing nothing for a bit. It is a slow reveal. and it is so worth it, in my opinion anyway. Final book on this list, I wonder about my choices making this the final one. Oh well, it's The Magicians. This is a trilogy that I love and many people that I love hate. But I think it is a great fall time read. I think that it fits that category. It is the dark academia vibe. The world that we're exploring is this magical school for wizards. A lot of people compare it to Harry Potter, and I do think that that's an apt comparison, but I think Narnia is the more apt comparison. So maybe like Harry Potter, Narnia, all mixed together with a whole big dollop of melancholy mixed in. It is Quincy. Is that his name or is it Quentin? I always forget. Quentin! His name is Quentin. He is obsessed with these books that are very reminiscent of Narnia, and he goes off to this magical school, and it is not glorious. Studying magic is hard work, and Quentin is a hard character to be in the head of a lot. But it's also very, very vividly told and very, very immersive, and we are drawn right into this magical school and to learning these systems and stepping through into the Narnia of this world and exploring it. And I loved the entire trilogy despite having many, many problems with it. I loved these books. I do have a couple of videos where I go through them, at least one. There's at least one video where I go through the first book. Whatever, stuff will be on the screen. That is my list of fall recommendations. It didn't seem as long when I was making it up, but now that I filmed it, it seems long. Anyway, I do hope that there is one book on this list that is interesting enough to you that you'll at least look into it a little bit more. If not, I'm so very sorry for wasting your time. Do tell me if you have any quintessential fall books that you would like to recommend in the comments. I would love to hear it, or if there are any books that I recommended today that you plan on checking out or even picking up. Please do chat with me more in the comments. I would love to talk with you more. I'll see you again soon. Bye.